Hello and welcome to another Min podcast with Maymunah and Nagina. This is our second podcast. We hope you all tuned into our first podcast, which was Motherhood, Modernity and the Middle Way. We received some fantastic responses from many like-minded women who tuned in and, talked about their experiences of motherhood. Maymunah?
Hello. Hi, Nagina. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, welcome to everyone to our second podcast. I just want to say thank you to everyone who listened into the first podcast. We actually received some really touching responses from women who personally reached out and said that the podcast really echoed their experiences and sentiments of motherhood. So I think we're sort of reaching the aim that we hope to achieve, which is creating a conversation about all the different areas of women's lives and how it affects them. So that was a great experience, and thanks to all our listeners. We hope you tune in again today.
Absolutely. And this podcast will be discussing Britain's silent epidemic, anxiety, which I know that a lot of you will be, resonating with. And I hope to, we hope to receive similar feedback. So please follow.
We received a request, didn't we, Nagina, to talk about this specific subject?
We did.
So that was interesting, I think. I think lots of people out there that want this discussion about anxiety and what it is, and I think it affects people from all walks of life, really.
This is it, and I'm going to go in with a short definition. It's been defined as a panic spectrum disorder, and it's one of the most prevalent mental conditions in Britain, which is slightly worrying, Maymunah. It entails a heightened sensitivity and just a response, our body's response to, an unpredictable threat, which is quite scary, as you can't really pinpoint the reason why you're feeling anxious. And although it feels like a new, disease, it's actually not a disease of the 21st century. In fact, Freud, who was a leading psychologist, wrote about it about 90 years ago. And, in his book, The Problem of Anxiety, he defines it as a threat that's usually located in the future, such as humiliation or, ruination. So, most sufferers usually are, excessively worry about the future.
It's interesting that you say it's not actually a new disorder or a disease. I'm not sure what it's called medically, but anxiety isn't a new phenomenon. I mean, it's probably the new thing is that we discuss it more, or the stigma associated with around it is actually, the layers of that are coming off, and people are having more of a conversation about anxiety. So it's probably always existed, and I think today we're going to try and contribute somewhat to that discussion.
Absolutely. And, we know that anxiety and unhappiness in general is growing amongst young people, and even those who are middle-aged or older, in fact. And I am slightly wary because I do think it's been glamorized to an extent, particularly, on the social media channels. But my first question to you, Maymunah, is: do you think anxiety is something that, affects us all at certain times? And if so, when and, why?
Oh, that's a challenging first question to begin with, Nagina. So, I mean, I think we all, no matter how powerful, successful, self-assured, confident we are, I think at some point or other in our lives, everybody experiences anxiety or something close to it, and it could be of varying degrees. And although I'm not obviously a psychological expert, I do believe that anxiety isn't necessarily a single or a singular experience. I think it can't be divorced from the rest of the human experience. So for me, I think the mind, body and soul are closely linked. And when something happens to the mind or the body, the soul is affected, and vice versa. So just pulling on from my own personal experience in the Islamic tradition, we believe that what we do to our body affects our soul. And what we see, what we say, what we hear, all of that is connected to our inner being. And that's why in Muslim tradition we have, everything is about servitude, serving God. And we have prayer, which is a physical experience as well as a spiritual. We have fasting, which is about training the body. So my point being is that when it comes to anxiety, I think that it's a mind, body, soul experience in a way. All of those things are connected and can potentially contribute to anxiety. So I think, answering your question, about is it something that affects us all? Yes. And how and why? I think quite often we associate anxiety, just quite similar to what Freud said, with fears and apprehensions of the known and the unknown. But I think for me, crucially, when I was thinking about this topic and I was researching it, I think, and again, my personal experience is that when you experience something physically first, be it you hear something or you see something, when you experience it physically, it then later internalizes and it can form some sort of anxiety in your body, in your inner being, if you like. And so in today's day and age, our eyes, our ears are exposed to so much, be it through mass media, for example. And I think your eyes are constantly, exposed to this world, mass media, online, offline, and then suddenly, sort of your soul is taking it in, and when you're taking it in, that anxiety can develop then. So I think it's about having a healthy mind, healthy body, healthy soul, and all of that contributes to the human experience. And I think young people, and I have to really stress this, is that young people and increased social media usage makes certain people definitely more prone to anxiety. I mean, Nagina, what are your thoughts on the Instagram world of perfection?
I mean, I was reading, Zadie Smith has just written a new a book, and it's about some of her essays, and in there she talks about, the effects of social media, and she absolutely hates any form of, technology, she said, because it actually contributes to the anxiety that she feels, and actually, I was thinking that, although we're living in a digital age where we're supposedly very connected, we are less connected, in fact, to each other, aren't we? And daily life is also, it's less communal and collaborative as it used to be 100 years ago. So again, I think we don't have, I think what's important is having that strong support network. And we've talked about this quite a lot, haven't we, Moan? Whether it's motherhood, anxiety, I think to voice, to be able to talk to somebody.
And I think with the social media issue, that there are positive things about social media and social networking. But there are also numerous studies which have shown that stress related to, for instance, befriending people on Facebook. There are studies on social isolation and also this 24 hours news cycle that are damaging to mental health. So there's one study that I wanted to cite, which I found really fascinating. It's called the #Status of Mind survey. Right. And it was published by the United Kingdom's Royal Society for Public Health. And it included input from 1,479 young people aged 42 to 24 from across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And they basically gathered their thoughts, experiences of social media. And there were certainly some benefits associated with social networking. So all of the sites, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, they all received positive scores for self-identity, self-expression, community building, emotional support. But then Instagram, interestingly, was associated with high levels of anxiety, depression, bullying, and this was an interesting one, FOMO, which is the fear of missing.
I've heard about that one. Yeah.
And, that really, I didn't find it surprising. So I think at some point or another, I've actually felt some of those emotions when I'm going through my social media feed excessively, which really I shouldn't have time for because I'm, I should probably be doing other things rather than checking my social media, which is a separate story altogether. But I think that fear of missing out was very high on the prevalent in the survey, and I think that these are the things that are causing anxiety, or not necessarily causing them, but definitely exasperating them, causing them to become far higher worrying levels. Definitely Instagram. I think there's the studies are very clear on that. But at the same time, social media isn't the only thing causing anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. And we had an assembly the other day. I'm a teacher, so I work in a secondary school, and the head teacher was addressing the students during the Internet Safety Day, and he was saying that actually our attachments to our phones in general, just our attachments to technology, may be contributing to anxiety. And you have a lot of, young people who are substituting their parental, love, towards their phone, which is really odd. So they're more attached to their phones than they are to their parents. They'd rather be on their phones than, conversing with their siblings or conversing with their family. So that obviously that's a very worrying trend.
It's frightening, and you might think it's just they're just checking their phone, but the consequences of that is becoming that you're becoming more socially isolated. It means that you essentially become more lonely, and you don't reach out to your support networks when you need it, and you're potentially missing out on so much love and reality and meaningful relationships. It's also on Instagram as well. This is my personal vendetta at the moment, because I've been on a bit of an Instagram detox, but I do love it as well. But I have to say, you just see some of these relationships on Instagram, and they're just so superficial. And
this is it. It's not real life, is it? And actually, a lot of do you find, Maymunah, that a lot of Instagrammers now are more honest and open? They talk very openly about their anxiety, but also you have a lot of women who are, readily now taking off their makeup and saying, actually, I look like this. This is not real life,
I think so, and I think we will have this kind of awakening, and it's kind of happening with social media, that it's too much. There's this really famous YouTuber, I can't remember her full name, and she's I'm not going to guess what her name was, but she was really famous, and she went through this sort of breakdown, and now she's come back with her story about how what the reality
I think I read an article.
Made up perfectionism. But I think anxiety, coming back to the issue itself, it's something that has existed since time immemorial. This predates the social media world, and even if we look to ancient texts, again, I'm a Muslim, and when we look back even to the Quran, we see there are many stories and instances where people, prophets, saints were stricken with grief, anxiety, and torment. And I think there's something about the human condition that, despite advances in technologies and modernity, there's something about the human state that remains the same. The feelings and struggles are the same as our ancestors, and they may be caused by different things, but the manifestation or a sense of sorrow is something that every living being will probably experience at one point or another, whether it be anxiety or worry about money or family or love or wherever. And I think, we've made the point today in our discussion, that anxiety exists, and it can manifest itself in many ways, and there's lots of causes, and all this bombarding with images is one of the reasons. But moving on from that, I think today, if people listen to the podcast and they go away with something, is, Nagina, what can we suggest to do to prevent or cure anxiety?
Absolutely. Well, I was reading, this concerns all of us. The general consensus among psychiatrists is that between 10% and 30% of the population is going to suffer from an anxiety, disorder. And under the umbrella of anxiety, you'll find a whole range of disorders, from OCD to complete panic disorder to post-traumatic stress, in fact, which is, one of the worst. And particularly in relation to women in their 20s were often cited as having the highest levels of anxiety. And I think, when reading about young people in general, they spend a lot of time worrying about what they're going to do with their life. And previous generations, they had choice almost like taken out of their hands. So in a way, they had less to worry about and, less to stress about. So in a way, I think because we have so much choice nowadays, I don't want to put it down to that, because in a way that's a good thing. But is it,
but it's a good thing, right? But it's also like a curse. And I'll just give you a personal example of me. And my sisters and my friends laugh at me, because when I go shopping, oh my God.
We were talking about this the other day.
Right, I went shopping recently, and just the anxiety I experienced of choosing something. I don't know if this is just a female thing, but I think I'm a bit abnormal when it comes to shopping. That was just so much choice.
Yeah.
And then there was a sale, and then it was just you're absolutely right. The idea
I get anxiety when I get anxiety when, my husband asks me where I want to eat. I literally cannot make a decision.
Oh my goodness, yeah. But I mean, part of it is definitely our exposure to choice and having too much,
Absolutely.
That is also a cause of anxiety for sure. Personally, definitely, yeah.
And I think, minimalizing everything, just leading a minimalist life. I think what you said as well, just practicing detachment, whether you're detoxing from technology, I think that's incredibly important in the fight against anxiety. I do want to be conscious of oversimplifying the issue, as many suffer intermittent bouts of, panic and fear, and others, obviously, it stems from a deeper childhood trauma. My sister suffers crippling anxiety, and she has no reason for it whatsoever. She doesn't know why she suffers from it. She can't pinpoint, the reasons.
Absolutely. And I'm, talking about my shopping anxiety, but some people have it on a much
larger scale,
yeah, and that's something that we as a society we need to make sure as well that we're there supporting people who have anxiety, especially the anxiety that leads up to mental health disorders and real social isolation. I think despite our discussions around anxiety and more so mental health, we still need to do so much more, even in the most progressive societies in the UK and in other places in the world. That there still needs to be more of a, are we reaching out to people? Are we there for people? And getting rid of that stigma.
I was literally going to say this, Moan. It's the stigma, isn't it, attached to it as well. No one wants to be perceived as being, out of control or, not being able to deal with, certain things. And actually, we need to be able to, be honest about it. That I'm having a bad day. I'm feeling incredibly anxious.
Absolutely.
And sorry.
Go.
Go for it.
This is typical me and Nagina.
It is. We always talk over each other.
But I'll let you go first. Go on, please.
No, I want you to go first, because then I was going to introduce the last segment, which was what can we do to prevent or cure anxiety.
Perfect. I think it would be good to talk about that, just because specifically for the person who reached out for us to discuss this, I really want them to listen and hopefully take something away. And others and myself, really, this is advice to myself and to anybody listening. So what can we do to prevent or cure anxiety? And I think some of this comes from, I've sort of got four points that I just want to briefly discuss. And some of this comes from just my personal experience, and some of it comes from what I've heard professionally and read online. And some of it comes from my religion and my spiritual belief. So number one, I think trying to prevent and cure anxiety, my first sort of suggestion is trying to resolve the root cause. So is there an underlying worry or problem causing the anxiety? And often there is, and sometimes there isn't, because as we discussed earlier in terms of understanding anxiety, sometimes you can't pinpoint what it is. But where you can, try to understand the root problem and ask yourself, can I resolve this? Empower yourself. And I think that takes a level of courage and self-belief and determination. And if you can't do it on your own, can someone help me resolve it? Are there friends, family, professionals I can turn to who I can discuss this with? And can we solve it together? So, trying to empower yourself with the solution, or trying to seek the help to find the solution for understanding or tackling a root cause is probably my number one suggestion. And I think that takes courage, and sometimes facing ourselves is the biggest obstacle. So that's definitely one of the things that we can try to do to overcome anxiety. Number two, and this is just something personal for me, and online, I've read so much about this, is getting off social media. And I regularly have my detoxes where I just deactivate all social media for a couple of days, weeks, even months, and just focus entirely on the real world, my real life, and me. And I'm actually not one of these person who's like crazy social media with thousands of followers. I have like a limited amount of followers of people I know, and obviously TheMinBlog, which is great and something I love and enjoy and I'm passionate about. But sometimes I think we just need to switch off, and that certainly has helped me, and it looks like it's helping a lot of other people as well. if you think that's where some of the anxiety is emanating from, of course. And not just that, I think there are a million and one direct distractions that we've become so used to, checking our phones. There was like a study on the BBC or something recently about how many times a day we check our phones, and it was just ridiculous, of course. And number 3, find a ritual that brings your mind, soul and spirit together, mind, body and spirit together even. So it may be running, maybe yoga, it may be meditation. In the Muslim tradition, we have prayer, we have dhikr, which is the remembrance of God. And you know, these are things that certainly can just bring a bit of silence and focus into your life, and highly recommend doing something like that. And number 4, and perhaps I think this is something you can do instantly. You know, if anybody out there is feeling down or feeling that they have anxiety or just having, you know, a feeling of sorrow, try to abandon it and try to go and find good company. You know, surround yourself with genuine good people. And honestly, I just don't know any better medicine than that for anxiety and overcoming anxiety. You know who your friends are, know who your support network is, and spend time with them. And we have a saying in the Sufi tradition which says that if you walk into a perfume shop, you'll come out, you know, smelling like perfume. And if you walk into, you know, a coal mine, you'll be covered in soot, you know. And so the lesson being that, you know, wherever you are, the company that you surround yourself in, that's really what ends up becoming, you know, who you are and what you are. And so just surrounding yourself by good people. If it's people or somebody who's pulling you down, that's maybe the root cause of the anxiety, get them out, you know, of your life. And I sound a bit like Oprah here, which
I love it. I think you've encapsulated that absolutely wonderfully.
There's something about, you know, just good people and sincere people and being surrounded by them that certainly should help. So those are my 4 top tips.
Love that, Maymunah. I will definitely be, you know, practicing that and being a lot more conscious. I think, you know, this morning I did write a blog post on silence as well and the benefits of, you know, meditation and just coming away from everything for a couple of minutes and just, you know, just listening to the sounds of nature, because that helps me and that's my own personal strategy. But also I think we need to bear in mind that, you know, we need to find the strength in anxiety as well. Every single person, you know, who has experienced anxiety, you know, it's an act of survival. It's an act, you know, that shows that you are demonstrating a great deal of courage. So, you know, be hopeful and know that it's something that you can overcome. And on that note, I shall wrap it up. Thank you so much, Maymunah, for joining us today.
I want to add as well, and don't forget to follow the TheMinBlog, because we hopefully have lots of positivity on there.
Absolutely. Leave us your thoughts and feedback, and do forward the link to friends and family who may be suffering from anxiety. And if you do need any other information, then do go and look at Anxiety UK, which is a national charity and an association of the mental health providers who help people dealing with anxiety, and it's supported by a very high profile medical advisory panel as well. So thank you for listening. Tune in next time.
Thank you, Nagina. Great.